What is up, fellow Big Ten brethren? The soothing voices you're tuned in to hear, well, it's just a singular voice, and this time you're also going to be seeing it. That's right. More on that in a second. Of course, it is Andy Coppins, publisher of talking10.com, ready to pontificate on everything Big Ten football as we hit the near midpoint of the season for just about everybody in the Big Ten. And that means it's time to take stock of the conference and where this season has taken us thus far. We'll stroll down memory lane together and do some grading. But before we get into the nitty gritty, let's just take some time here to honor one of the Big Ten's most recent icons, former Purdue head coach Joe Tiller, who passed away last Saturday at the age of 74. It's always tough to lose someone like that, and while it's a sad topic, at least Tiller got to see the Boilers begin to turn back around under another offensive innovator in Jeff Brom, even if it was just for a brief while. Personally, I'll never forget how he made me care about Purdue football and made battles with Wisconsin into one of the more heated contests in the Big Ten for much of his time in West Lafayette. We can always be thankful he showed us you could actually pass the football and win in the Big Ten. Without him, this conference still may be stuck in that 3 yards and a cloud of dust mentality across the league. So, Joe Tiller, hats off to you for all you did for Purdue, for Big Ten football, and for the world, because you, my friend, were one great human being on and off the field. You will be missed, and thank you for everything you contributed to my upbringing and loving college football. But on a happy note as well, continuing on that theme, we're going to turn from Purdue to the team that took them down just a few short weeks ago, because one of our favorite segments here on the podcast is back, and it's time for This Week in Jim Harbaugh. And of course, well, folks, what is a This Week in Jim Harbaugh update without a little controversy? And, well, it's not really controversial. It's actually more of a fun moment. Jim Harbaugh doing a little bit of his own fun thing with the cannonball contest that was going on for Michigan swimming and diving. Literally coming off of a platform and cannonballing in his full-on khaki gear. Yes, Jim Harbaugh apparently even wears khakis while swimming. Somehow, I would believe that over you telling me that he wore Speedos while swimming. But on a more serious This Week in Jim Harbaugh note, Michigan fan, how are you feeling about paying Jim Harbaugh $9 million a year to lose to Michigan State and go nowhere in the Big Ten East Division? You paid Brady Hoke far less to do quite the same. Just saying. For me, though, it comes down to this. Jim Harbaugh was paid to do one thing and one thing only. That was to bring Michigan football Big Ten championships at a minimum. We're in year 3. He's got one loss in Big Ten play already, and it was to a division foe as well. There's still Wisconsin, there's still Penn State, there's still Ohio State. You lose 4 games inside of conference play, or you lose 2 of those 3 games, you're looking at a very mediocre season for a team everybody thought was going to be this great top 10 program. 14-10, you lose 14-10. Not loving that. I mean, especially since Jim Harbaugh is supposed to be this great offensive innovator and this great mind of offensive football. We just haven't seen it. And John O'Korn appears to maybe not have been the answer. Now we got Wilton Spade out for the season. So where do you turn if you're Michigan? I mean, there are a lot of questions about this team. We'll talk about their grade next week because they'll finally get in their 6th game of the season. But speaking of grades here, since it's just me, myself, and I at talking10, of course, you can find me on Twitter at AndyOnFootball. But let's get into the classroom grades here for the teams that have completed 6 games so far this season. Hence, they're at the midway point of the season. Up first, in alphabetical order here, well, sort of alphabetical order, we're going to go with the Iowa Hawkeyes. For me, on the one hand, they went into Jack Trice Stadium and they beat Iowa State, who just beat Oklahoma in Norman. On the other hand, they found a way to let Penn State win in the final minute when they had a potential program-defining moment against the Nittany Lions at home. And then the next week went out and lost to Michigan State on the road. Maybe there's nothing bad about losing either of those 2 games, and you could make an argument that going into the season, maybe you could see both being a loss. But if you wanted to win the Big Ten West Division, you had to win one of those 2 games. In going into the season, I think winning that Michigan State game was probably a very much realistic probability. And it's also a game that they should have won. Instead, again, they snapped defeat from the jaws of victory, somehow, someway doing it again. This time, Nate Stanley going all sorts of fumble-rooski near the goal line and ruining Iowa's chance for at least the tie ball game, if not a victory. Instead, well, they've had some good moments too. I mean, beating Wyoming the way they did, but offensively, this team has just been very inconsistent. 2 games dropped in conference play, not exactly, as I said before, what was on this team's radar. There's no doubt about it. And the worst part, they're already 2 games back of Wisconsin in that West Division race. That's a major problem because that means Wisconsin's got to lose one other game and then lose to you and hope to God nobody else wins. Not controlling your own destiny after 6 games, that earns you a C+ in my book. Now, there's no doubt that Nate Stanley has looked like one of the Big Ten's most promising quarterbacks at times, but he's also struggled at times against better defenses, and that's a problem because he's got some good ones still to go. And Iowa's defense, they've been stout at times, but again, when they've been needed the most, they've failed. That last drive by Penn State, the number of penalties and the number of crap situations that they just couldn't find a way to stop the big play from Penn State when it counted most, just not a good sign of a team that's ready to compete for a Big Ten championship. I'm going to give them a passing grade, like I said, C+ there, but just barely for me on this contest. So, a C+ for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Speaking of one of the Iowa Hawkeyes foes, we're going over to the East Division here, and it's the Penn State Nittany Lions. That's right. Penn State gets an A+ for me. Now, a few teams in the Big Ten have looked as dominant as Penn State has. Trace McSorley has been a really good quarterback. Saquon Barkley is simply the best all-around offensive player in the country at this moment. Oh, and that defense, it's taking care of business. Now, sure, the schedules turned out to be a cupcake city with the likes of Akron, Pitt being pretty god-awful, Georgia State, Indiana, and Northwestern to date. Their only challenge really came on the road to Iowa, and, well, guess what? It wasn't pretty, but McSorley led a last-minute comeback like we talked about. They secured the win, and they got the W on the road. That's really all that matters for me here. Now, this team, for me, I would say not only do they get an A+, but right now, they look like the best all-around team in the country outside of Alabama. So for me, I think they're the second best team, easily the best team to come out of the Big Ten so far. But we don't know if they could potentially be better than Alabama. And we're not going to know that until they face Michigan, Michigan State, and Ohio State. And all of those 3 games come in that back half of the schedule. For now, good luck poking holes in this team's performance, though, so A+ for me. We're going to stick in the East Division and talk about, well, the other team that everybody thinks is a contender here, and that's Ohio State. For me, maybe I'm going to grade a bit on a curve when it comes to the Buckeyes, but here's the deal for me. Ohio State, they went out and they got beaten bad by the first real team it's seen so far, and the only real team it's seen so far this season. That was Oklahoma at home. That loss, not impressive for me. But the other part is this. Ohio State has looked impressive the rest of the way since that Oklahoma loss. And everything is still in front of Ohio State because they do control their own destiny. And that's a lot of good news, right? That's a lot of... You got yourself in a good spot if you're halfway through the season and you can still control your own destiny in the Big Ten East Division. The bad news is that this grade may end up being a failing grade at the end of the year if things don't go 100% right, because they still have Michigan. They still got Michigan State. They still got Penn State to go on that schedule. There's still plenty of wonder because we really don't know. I mean, they haven't played anybody outside of that Oklahoma game. So when they actually are challenged by a really strong team, can they stand up to that challenge? Could Michigan's run game do some damage to them? Or what about the fact that they're going to run into Michigan's defense? What about stopping Trace McSorley and Saquon Barkley? They have not faced a team since Oklahoma that can run, pass, and play defense. And so for me, I'm going B- on my grade here because I have been impressed with what I've seen from the progression from this team. But I want to see if that Oklahoma game was an anomaly and they're going to be able to be better, or if it was an indicator. And we just don't know. So for right now, the grade a B- for me overall, because there's a lot of holes that you can poke, unlike Penn State, a lot of holes that you can poke into Ohio State. So let's see what happens, but right now, a B-. And ironically, the next team on the list happens to be a team that, well, plays Ohio State this weekend. And of course, we're talking about the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And for me, when you lose to a MAC school at home, and I mean no disrespect to Northern Illinois here, and then you lose that game and then get your AD fired because of it, you know you're not having a good season. And such is definitely the case for the Huskers, who haven't beaten any of the good teams on its schedule yet this season. Last weekend, it found a way to get beaten by Wisconsin after tying the game up at 17-17 in the third quarter. And the Badgers threw the ball maybe twice after that. That's not good news. And they were still able to literally just manhandle the Huskers. That's not good news. And for me, that win by Wisconsin, that loss by Nebraska, is an indictment of where Riley's Huskers are. Many wonder if Mike Riley's days are numbered. I can tell you right now, they likely are. And with a new AD en route and an inability to win any big game at any point in time in his 3 years at the helm of the program, not a good sign. What might be his saving grace, though, is that we've seen improvement on both sides of the ball. Up until that later part of the game, Wisconsin, they were handling things okay, and Tanner Lee was playing some pretty good football. And then it all went off the rails. So for me, D- for the Huskers, losing at home to a MAC program, even a really good one like Northern Illinois, not good news for me. Not in the least. So, epic fail, bad grades come along with said epic fail. Alright, well, this is normally the point in time where Phil gets to brag because he's probably beating me in the predictions. But before we move forward here on the Talking 10 podcast, do not forget you can also see this podcast, since it's just me, myself, and I. We'll see the visual version of this podcast over at our YouTube page. You can just simply go to YouTube and type in Talking 10. It'll be the first thing you see. Subscribe away. And of course, we will put this entire podcast up for your viewing pleasure. That will be on there as well. So make sure you do check that out in the coming, in the coming day or so before week 7 becomes, the talking point for everybody. That being said, also, we will be putting out a new product on the YouTube channel. So you're not just going to get the B1G Rewind show each and every week. You're also going to get what I'm going to be calling 3 yards and a cloud of previews. That's right, our previews, and we're changing some things up with the podcast. But not only that, we're also going to be doing a little bit different on our previews. You can go anywhere and read an in-depth team preview, but what about what it says for the entirety of the Big Ten, right? And I don't think anybody really kind of focuses on the macro level, and that's what 3 yards and a cloud of preview is going to be about. It's going to be about what does it mean for the Big Ten? What are the games to watch? What are the nuances of some of those matchups and some of those overarching themes that really don't get talked about? So we're going to have some of the in-depth stuff, but we're also going to have the macro stuff here because I think it's vitally important. So starting next week, obviously with the podcast being visual this week, the podcast is going to turn a little more away from previews and a little more mixing and matching of talk about the Big Ten. But we're going to go with 3 yards and a cloud of preview. We're going to get you the best matchups. We're going to get you players and stats and all sorts of wonderful stuff on that show. So be on the lookout for 3 yards and a cloud of preview next week on Talking 10 TV on YouTube. But without further ado, let's get into the Pick'em rundown here on the podcast. Because, folks, it hasn't been great for me, but I can tell you this. Last week, Phil kicked my ass in the straight up. He went 6-1 last week. I played around with the straight up a little bit more. I went 3-3. However, I was really good against the spread. I went 5-2 against the spread last week. 4-3 against the spread for Phil. So for the season record, I'm 30-25, 5 games above 500 against the spread. Phil coming in at 30-29 against the spread. Not too shabby there. And he is 50-11 on the season overall. Not too shabby. But yeah, for me, I'm enjoying the fact that I went from 25-23 to 30-25 this week. So going into week 7, before we get into the picks, y'all, gotta say this. Do not forget to visit our sponsors at mybookie.ag. Now, I'd only recommend a service to our listeners, to our viewers, that's been good to me. And I can't say enough about what MyBookie brings to the table. If you're somebody that likes to put a little money where your mouth is, or have a little bit of fun, it is a great service. I personally have used part of that just because we're not going to sponsor something that we don't know anything about. It's the ease of use. The mobile website's amazing, and you can't beat nearly 100% cash bonus on your first deposit. That's mybookie.ag. I'm urging you, head over there. You win, they pay. 2-day payouts, simple games. They've got the casino, they've got the sports book, they've got all your betting needs and all of the fun little casino things that you could do too if you're into those types of things. That said, you just simply need to go to mybookie.ag, join now, enter that promo code talking10. You'll receive up to 100% cash bonus on your first deposit. Again, that's mybookie.ag, promo code talking10, mybookie.ag, promo code talking10. Get your 100% cash bonus. You play, you win, you get paid. It's just that simple. All right, but let's move on from all of that and let's get into the mixing and matching of the games. There's 6 games on the docket this weekend in the Big Ten. Up first, we've got Michigan sitting at 4-1 and 1-1 in the Big Ten at Indiana, 3-2 and 0-2 in B1G play. Interestingly enough, the line in this game, Michigan -7. Kick time for this one is noon Eastern on ABC because, again, Michigan and ESPN apparently have some weird thing going on because I think this is the 3rd week in a row we've seen Michigan playing on ABC. That being said, obviously the Wolverines, they've got to come out and win this contest if they want to have any chance in hell of doing anything in the Big Ten East Division. That being said, I think for me, this game is more about Indiana's disappointing 2017 versus what Michigan's disappointing 17 has been about. And here's why. Because I think going into the season, I knew Indiana would struggle a little bit offensively. They've got some moving parts. And obviously with Kevin Wilson's departure, things were going to be different offensively. But the big surprise for me has been how consistently mediocre that defense has been, and that might be putting it kindly. Indiana's defense has been the low spot for me for the Hoosiers so far this year. They can't stop anybody. Richard Lago has lost all sorts of confidence, and the offense has sputtered a little bit, but the insertion of the brand new quarterback last week did wonders for them. I really think Indiana's on the right track here, but going up against that Michigan defense is just too much, and I think Michigan's offense can show that they can beat bad defenses, and that's what Indiana is. Indiana's regressed defensively and are starting to progress offensively, but that's not going to matter against Michigan's defense here. I'm going to go with Michigan and the points in this game. I think they can win by at least 10, if not 14 points in this contest. I just don't trust Indiana to get anything done defensively, and I would trust Michigan's ground game to be able to at least handle what Michigan needs to get done in this game. So it will be interesting to see what happens in this contest here. Phil, just so you know, was also filling out his Yahoo Pick'em League situation. So I don't have his picks because we can't see them until then. However, it should be an interesting battle in Bloomington. Moving on, though, game number 2 on the docket at the noon Eastern, 11 Central Time. Sorry, I'm here in Chicago, so Central Time is what it is. Rutgers 1-4 and 0-2 in the Big Ten at Illinois, 3-2 and 0-2 in the Big Ten as well. The line is somehow Illinois -2.5. And folks, if you know anything about point spreads, if you know anything about how they set these things, you're getting 3 points for being the home team. And Illinois is getting less than 3 points in this matchup. My main question is anybody going to score in this game? We're seeing 2 of the most inept offenses in the Big Ten going up against, 2 of the... It's really weird because, Rutgers doesn't give up a ton of points. They just can't score. And Illinois has been able to stop mediocre offenses. So, again, this is a game where it's kind of a game of chicken of whose offense is going to be able to outmaneuver the other team's defense. And here's where I'm going on this one. I'm going Illinois wins this game. And you might ask yourself, well, why Illinois? It's partly that they're at home, but it's also partly that I believe they've got more playmakers offensively and defensively than Rutgers does. I like Mikey Dudek. Mike Epstein is a great running back for the future. Illinois got some good pieces to the puzzle in the secondary, and they can rush off the edge at times. So I think they can get that job done at home. The 2.5 points, I could see them winning by 6, maybe 10 at most. I think Illinois gets off the schneid and continues to progress. If they can just win 3 games here going forward, they can make a bowl game, and I think that would help Lovie Smith's career out quite a bit in Champaign. I just don't trust what Rutgers is doing offensively here. So give me Illinois and the points in this matchup. Matchup number 3 coming to you at 3:30 Eastern Time, 2:30 Central on BTN is Purdue 3-2, 1-1 in the Big Ten at Wisconsin, 5-0 on the season, 2-0 in the Big Ten. Line on this one, Wisconsin -17. Purdue comes in, and I talked about this over at Talking Badgers, so you might want to actually check that out at wisconsin.talking10.com. But Purdue comes in as the best offense Wisconsin has seen all season. It literally statistically is the best offense that the Badgers have faced. That said, Wisconsin's defense has really ratcheted up against all comers. They gave up 17 points last week to Nebraska. They gave up some yards in the pass game. But at the same point in time, they clamped down when they absolutely had to. And they're capable of just completely shutting a run game out here. Purdue, they've got a decent run game. They don't have a great one. And while David Blau and company at quarterback, while they've been somewhat impressive and they can put up big numbers, Nick Nelson against that wide receiver core, Derek Tyndall against that wide receiver core, Dakota Dixon, Natrell Jamerson, and then you add in what they're doing off the edge as blitz packages and all the versatility that Wisconsin's defense offers. They're at home. They're really good. And this is a team that's not doing what Wisconsin teams of old love to do, and that's play down to competition. They're going to win this game going away. Give me the Badgers plus the 17 points. This one is easy for me. While Purdue is getting better, they're not anywhere near Wisconsin's level. The Badgers' defense probably holds Purdue to 17 points. Wisconsin's offense scores into the 30s or 40s because, again, they wear you down on both sides of the football and just eat you alive in that second half. So I'm going to go with Wisconsin plus the 17 points there. Moving forward, we're going to go to a cross-divisional game here. Northwestern 2-3, 0-2 in the Big Ten at Maryland 3-2, 1-1 in the Big Ten. Kick time is 3:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. The line in this one is Northwestern -3. This game intrigues me a lot, and let's just put it this way. I think it might be weird to say Northwestern Maryland intriguing in the same sentence, because Maryland just got done getting their ass stomped all over by Ohio State, while Northwestern has looked god-awful in its first 2 losses. But that's just why this game intrigues me, because Maryland also went out and won at Minnesota with Max Bortenschlager as their starting quarterback. Meanwhile, Maryland's defense has been atrocious, and Clayton Thorson plus Justin Jackson could get the job done if the offensive line ever wants to show up at all. Northwestern -3 in this game. I'm going to go with the home team here because of this. Maryland's run game. Maryland's run game has been their one consistent thing, and they do it well, and they do it in bursts. So give me the Terps run game against Northwestern's defense, because I ain't trusting a damn thing Northwestern does until their offensive line can prove to me that they've got their crap together. Justin Jackson is not having a great senior season, and it has nothing to do with his ability. He literally is getting swallowed up 9 times out of 10 before he even gets to the line of scrimmage. And so anything positive that he does is a good thing at all. So, like I said, I'm going to go with the home team here. I'm going with Maryland. Northwestern continues to disappoint. And it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen in Evanston if Northwestern goes 0-3 to start Big Ten play. All right, so let's go on to the night games because we've got 2 of them. Thank you to Fox and BTN. Both of them are intriguing for a couple of different reasons, but we get Ohio State, who's 5-1, 3-0 in the Big Ten, at Nebraska, who's 3-3, 2-1 in Big Ten play. Kick time for this one is 7:30 p.m. Eastern on FS1. The line in this game is Ohio State minus 24. And I think that has a lot to do with what happened last week. They blew the ever-loving doors off of Maryland, and that surprised me because I thought the Terps would have a good enough defensive day that they could have covered the spread. Nebraska struggles with teams that can get chunk plays. We saw it last week, Jonathan Taylor going wild. They were just able to just run all over. That's Ohio State's bread and butter. That's not good news for me if you're a Nebraska fan. However, Tanner Lee and that pass game for the Huskers. Here's the deal for me on this one. Tanner Lee and that Huskers pass game, they can get the job done against Ohio State's secondary. Shouldn't be too terrible of a proposition. The issue for me is they do not have the ability to get a consistent run game going, and Ohio State loves to rush the passer. So, I don't see this ending well for Nebraska, but I also can't justify that 24-point spread on the road. I just think that the Huskers have shown an ability to at least show up a little bit against better competition, and they're not Maryland bad on defense. They're also better in the pass game than Maryland is. So, and they're better on the offensive line. So while Nebraska loses this one, Ohio State continues to roll at 4-0 in the Big Ten. They do not cover. That's right. Ohio State does not cover in this game. We're on to the nightcap in the Big Ten. The final game here, Michigan State coming in at 4-1 and 2-0 in the Big Ten, takes on Minnesota in Minnesota. The Gophers come into this one 3-2 and 0-2 in the Big Ten. Well, yeah, about this game. Let's just say this. I'm not sure what to really make of the Gophers or Michigan State offensively. Michigan State has been able to win games because of its defense so far in Big Ten play. That's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with being able to win defensive football games. But Minnesota can also play some decent defense, and Michigan State can't play offense. Meanwhile, Minnesota can't play offense. Are we in for 20-point less game here? It could be possible. We could be in for another 17-13 barn burner, or we could see somebody finally break out. And if so, I'm going to go with Michigan State in this contest here. Very simply, the Spartans have enough offensive firepower to at least do some damage. And I haven't seen Minnesota explode enough offensively to trust that they can do it against a good Spartans defense. So, for me, Sparty wins this one on the road. They move to 3-0 in Big Ten play, 5-1 on the season. and Minnesota puts themselves with Northwestern in a massive hole in the Big Ten West Division at 0-3. All right, folks. Well, that does it. You've listened to me ramble on by myself, me, myself, and I for the last 35, 36-ish minutes. So I just want to make sure to shout out the fact that you can subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching this and you're not doing it. You can do it below. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow all of the links in our show description on both YouTube, as well as find us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and the Google Play store as well. So, on behalf of Phil, who is out this week with a massive head injury, it is yours truly, Andy Coppin, saying, have yourselves a good rest of the week and keep on living the B1G life.